Hey guys, good evening and welcome. Let's go do your own research. I hope everyone's having the best Friday ever. Well, they're probably not watching this if they are. No, I'm joking. No, I enjoy it, so maybe you do. But yeah, we have another lawsuit concerning Wayfarer. They've been sued again by a black woman. So I needed to do another live stream about it. You may have seen one of my previous presentations on how this organization have treated a black man. Now we have a black woman. Her name is Celeste Smith. Let me show you who I'm talking about. There she is. Okay. So yeah, Celeste was working for Wayfarer while all the drama was going on, I think. And she was pretty much phased out and fired because of a difference of values and a whole bunch of other stuff, actually. Basically, her age, her race, and she was promised a 15-year career, and as soon as she sued Wayfarer, they shut down. But yeah, she has a pretty strong professional history working in fundraising and writing grants for arts projects, public arts projects, actually. So she's very much someone that I would love to meet. And previously to working at Wayfarer, she was a public art commissioner. So yeah, I was going to say as well, like, Paylocity, I already know Paylocity, which is Steve Sarowitz's business before he started Wayfarer. They had a whole load of lawsuits. Then he started Wayfarer in 2021, and we already know that they've been sued by Travis Flores, a disabled man, Shane Norman, a black man, Blake Lively, a woman, and now Celeste Smith. So I just want to quickly share her LinkedIn. Yeah, so that's 4 years and 4 lawsuits, if I'm not mistaken. So this is her LinkedIn. I'm not logged in, so can't show you everything, but she's a philanthropic strategist, culture worker, and founder of Grants and Grit LLC. That's her own company. We have a post from LinkedIn by Wayfarer Foundation, which says, congrats to Celeste Smith on her promotion to Senior Program Director in this pivotal role. Celeste will work closely with the Director of Programs to advance the Foundation's philanthropic mission through its program efforts of building stronger relationships with its community of partners and collaborators. She will also be focusing on how Wayfarer can leverage the transformative power of art to create spiritually enriching and positively impactful community experiences. She will oversee the Foundation's grant-making strategy, ensuring that funded initiatives align with our mission to uplift and transform communities through artistic expression. Celeste will collaborate with artists, organisers, community leaders, and grantee partners to develop and execute programs that foster creativity, spiritual growth, racial justice, and community cohesion. She will supervise the director of programs and program assistant. And that is the post they made. So if you have been watching any of my deep dives into the Epstein files about Leslie Wexner, you'll understand how foundations work. Steve Sarowitz is Justin Baldoni's Les Wexner. It's all about money laundering and fundraising. So they actually they function on donations and they don't have to pay tax. So it's very smart. But as we see from the Epstein files, it actually helps them to cover up any unlawful activity. They can actually service their own interests. And yeah, there's a lot of dodgy stuff going on behind the facade of what these foundations say they represent. Now, was I going to show anything else before we go to... Oh, yeah. So I thought it was really funny that when I searched Celeste C... Well, I actually spelled her name wrong, but Celeste C. Smith Wayfarer, the first thing that came up was, would you believe, Reddit, it ends with lawsuits. And the post says, what the hell is this now? Smith versus Wayfarer Foundation. So I guess someone somewhere is still using some form of SEO manipulation for this stuff, because that was right at the top of the search engine within one day. Anyway, here's the lawsuit. So we're going to read through it. It's only 38 pages and maybe add some little bits of extra context if it comes up, because I did look over it earlier and I do have some background information on Steve Sarowitz. So this is Wayfarer Foundation that is being sued, Wayfarer Pathways, and Steve Sarowitz individually. So like I said, Steve Sarowitz was Justin Baldoni's financial backer. And so as still is, I think, as far as the Blake Lively lawsuit is concerned. So yeah, that's her lawyer, Melvin Houston. So I had a quick look at him. I didn't look at Alice P. Jennings, but Melvin Houston has been involved in, he's a black guy as well. He's been involved in quite a few civil and social justice cases, genuine ones for a change. I couldn't find anything dodgy about him. The nature of the complaint is federal law violations against all defendants. This suit is brought by plaintiff Celeste Smith, a 52-year-old Muslim female African American who has been subjected to age, religion, gender, and race discrimination, including disparity of treatment and hostile work environment. Plaintiff, after engaging in protective activity, experienced retaliation by defendants, including individual Steve Sarowitz, in violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as amended and codified at 42 USC 2000. Based on gender, religion, and race, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, ADA, based on Age, and Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. So I remember them talking about this at the Baldoni versus Wayfarer, Blake Lively versus Wayfarer parties hearing the other day in the Southern District State of New York. This has been filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, Chicago. No, I'm joking. It's Highland Park. Okay, so what was I going to say about Steve Sarowitz? Oh yeah, Steve Sarowitz. So one of the first things we ever heard about Steve Sarowitz back in December 2024 was that he was overheard saying that he would spend $100 million to defend his studio, his pathetic little studio, or to protect his studio, as Israel did from Hamas. That was a quote that we heard from Steve Sarowitz, which was pretty alarming at the time, considering we didn't know who he was then. But now now that we know who he is, it's kind of even worse when you read this, what's alleged here. Because this guy really, really believes in genocide. He does. But goes around saying that he wants to make humanity better. Sounds a little bit like white supremacy to me, or a form of supremacy. Speaking of the foundation, yeah, I did actually find this document online which shows Wayfarer Foundation's account records since 2021. And it says they're tax exempt. Category philanthropy, volunteerism, and grant-making foundations, fundraising and or fund distribution. Donations to this organization are tax deductible. It says in 2024 they had a 1.73 million revenue with expenses of $29 million and total assets of 27.5 million. And total liabilities of 14.2 thousand. But then I was looking at this, and it said year ending 2024 revenue expenses 29 million minus net income 27.2757729, making a revenue of 1,726,331 dollars. Interest revenue was 935,081. The dividends was 700, so that's what you pay yourself. Contributions received only $5,940. This is in 2024. But Celeste Smith was paid $159,505K, and Laura Herrick, the CEO, was paid $250K. In 2023, is that minus 10 million? Charitable disbursements was 23 million. Total assets, 54 million. Assets debt, $2022, they had 100 million revenue. Anyway, something really funny is going on here. I'm just saying. But let's get back to the lawsuit. Plaintiff Smith brings counts under the Illinois Human Rights Act for age, religion, gender, race, and disability discrimination. Plaintiff pleads she was retaliated against after she engaged in protected activity by advising defendants of her claim. So that is exactly what Shane Norman and Blake Lively claimed. This is now the third person that said this, and she didn't sue them, but Claire Iab, who's a witness, she claimed that she felt very threatened to speak out. Plaintiff Smith brings an Illinois state law claim for promissory estoppel and equitable estoppel resulting in damages after plaintiff detrimentally relied upon defendant's promises that the defendant, Wayfarer Foundation, would not be sunset or discontinued for 15 years, but sunset in 4 years. So, yeah, what she's saying is that she was promised a 15-year job, and after 4 years, the company has closed, which literally happened after she sued them, or after she was fired, I think. Plaintiff seeks all available, or after she lost her job. Sorry, let me get my, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to spread misinformation. Plaintiff seeks all available remedies, including any and all damages allowable under the Title VII ADA, and Illinois Human Rights Act, and promissory estoppel and equitable estoppel law in Illinois. Federal jurisdiction is proper under 28 USC and all of that. Supplemental state claims are proper. Venue is proper in this district court. The amount in controversy exceeds $75,000. Plaintiff Celeste Smith is a resident of the County of Cook, City of Chicago, State of Illinois. Defendant Wayfarer Foundation was until July 1st, 2025, a non-profit organization with its principal place of business in Cook County, Wilmette, Illinois. Defendant Wayfarer Pathways is a corporation with its principal place of business in Cook County, Highland Park, Illinois. Oh, so we have a foundation and a corporation. Plaintiff Smith at all times was employed by defendants in its office located in Cook County at 350 Linden Avenue, Wilmette, Illinois. All acts and omissions by defendants, officers, directors, its human resources department, personnel and agents, including its board of directors, including but not limited to Steve Sarowitz, founder and board chairperson of Wayfarer Foundation, and Jennifer Weigel, interim CEO, executive director for Pathways Foundation, and Wayfarer Pathways human resources director. Laurie Kleiman and other human resources personnel were acting within the scope of their employment and or responsibilities at all relevant times stated in the complaint post July 1st, 2025 within private giving Wayfarer Pathways. Plaintiff Smith was aggressively recruited by then executive director of the Wayfarer Foundation in 2023. So this is a statement of facts. To end her employment at the Pittsburgh Foundation as a senior program officer, to work as an employee at the newly formed Wayfarer Foundation, a private non-profit arm of the Wayfarer Pathways, a for-profit corporation. An adjacent, handy to have an adjacent non-profit. On November 25th, 2025, Plaintiff Smith, then a terminated employee of defendants Wayfarer Foundation and Wayfarer Pathways, filed an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission EEOC charge with charges of violation of Title VII, violation of age discrimination in employment, violation of Americans with Disability Act, and violation of the Illinois Human Rights Act, filed concurrently with the EEOC charge. On or about November 25th, 2025, plaintiff received a notice of a right to sue email from the EEOC dated November 25th, 2025 for her charge. This claim is being timely filed. Plaintiff is a 52-year-old African-American female. Plaintiff Smith's religion is Muslim. I'm just going to show her picture again for a minute. In April 2025, Plaintiff Smith was injured and required accommodation under the ADEA, which she was exercising at the time of termination. So she had an injury, was off work because of an injury, because she's going to say what it is. I think she fell down the stairs. And that's when they got rid of her. Plaintiff Smith has a Bachelor of Arts in Management from Chatham University. Plaintiff Smith, with over 15 years of experience in non-profit employment and board service affiliations with non-profits by 2023, had a reputation as an excellent expert in all facets of non-profit management. Plaintiff had received awards and honours for her outstanding work. Plaintiff's reputation in the field of philanthropy was well known in 2023. At the time of plaintiff's hire with defendants, plaintiff's executive overarching skill set and competencies included as reflected on her curriculum vitae. So yeah, the picture I used in my thumbnail, it's really annoying. I can't show you her her current LinkedIn posts. But she has a post about she has a post about wait, let me just read it out. Goldman Sachs, 1 million Black women, Black in business. And I think that shows she's at the top level and she's pretty serious about what she does. So executive summary: spiritually grounded philanthropic executive with more than 15 years of senior leadership across foundations, cultural institutions, and movement-based organizations. Proven steward of complex values, driven institutions with deep experience in trust-based grant making, organizational culture, narrative strategy, and board partnership. Brings a pluralistic, systems-orientated approach to leadership that integrates spiritual practice, learning, and evaluation in service of long-term social transformation. Widely respected for guiding organizations through growth, complexity, and change, while honoring multiple ways of knowing and the leadership of frontline communities. I actually was in contact with someone that did this role during COVID, and she was extremely educated, a black woman as well, and she really helped me put a grant together because I had done it was kind of one of those things where I had done something to help her husband, and he's seen that I was trying to write this proposal, and he messaged me and he was like, "Oh, my wife does that for her job. Would you like her to help you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, please," because it was so difficult. Like I would never ever be able to do it. Um, I didn't end up getting the I didn't end up getting the grant anyway, but it's so hard doing these things to applying for a grant. It's really this is such a specialized field. These competencies, executive leadership and institutional stewardship, spiritually grounded and values-based philanthropy, board partnership, governance support, and executive advising, strategic grant making and ecosystem design, organizational culture, learning and change leadership, participatory and trust-based funding practices, narrative strategy and thought leadership, budget oversight, resource allocation and risk awareness, public speaking, convening and external representation. One thing that has become very, very clear from reading the Epstein files is just how incestuous and I don't know what the word is, not coming to mind, but these people all feed off of each other, and it's a very closed shop when it comes to the allocating of this money. The Wayfarer Foundation, a private non-profit organisation, was founded by businessman Steve Sarowitz and actor Justin Baldoni in 2019. So he's not on the filing. He's not been named as a defendant. It began operating in 2021. The Wayfarer Foundation was a philanthropic branch of Wayfarer Pathways, the for-profit umbrella parent corporation. The human resources functions for defendant Wayfarer Foundation at all times during its operations were administered by Wayfarer Pathways, including plaintiff's hire in 2021, the medical leave and accommodations and termination on May 2nd, 2025. Right, so that is very interesting. The human resources functions for defendant Wayfarer Foundation at all times during its operation were administered by Wayfarer Pathways. So they clearly, we're going to see in a minute, they clearly had a human resources department that was able to function. According, just not for Wayfarer Studios, according to its website, Wayfarer Foundation was created as a Baha'i-inspired organization with the mission to advance humankind spiritually towards a future peaceful world civilization. What a load of BS. The organization's stated goal was to fund and support spiritually rooted and justice-oriented non-profits. The other thing about the human resources functions as well is, what's his name? Jamie Heath didn't seem to have a clue about that. I'm sure he must have been aware of this organisation existing. The Wayfarer Foundation actively and aggressively pursued plaintiff to work at Wayfarer Foundation, though she was senior program officer at the Pittsburgh Foundation with several years of seniority and with a high potential for advancement. In hiring discussions and negotiations with defendants, plaintiff asked about the longevity of the Wayfarer Foundation's commitment to its stated purpose. Plaintiff was reassured by the then executive director, Laura Herrick, with promises that the sunset provision for the foundation was at least 15 years from its inception in 2021. Plaintiff Smith would not have accepted employment with defendants if she had not been promised by defendants that the nonprofit would operate under a 15-year sunset term. So she was obviously in a very successful role in a different state. I'm pretty sure Pittsburgh is not in Illinois. And she was like, well, I have a really good job that I'm set for life. So I need to have a guarantee that this is going to be a long lasting position that's going to give me the same securities that I've already got. Plaintiff, in interview with defendants, a mother of three, was concerned about the stability and longevity of the position with defendants and required stable employment and medical benefits for her family. Plaintiff Smith began planning for a long-term career with defendant Wayfarer Foundation, resigned from her position at the Pittsburgh Foundation. Plaintiff was hired on June 19, 2023, into the position of Program Officer of Arts. In December 2023, Plaintiff Smith, because of recognition of her excellent performance, was promoted to the position of Program Director. We just saw the post on LinkedIn. Less than a year later, in August 2024, again, because of her excellent performance, Plaintiff was promoted to Senior Program Director. In the position of Senior Program Director, Plaintiff Smith became a member of Defendant Wayfarer Foundation's executive team. As defendant's Senior Program Director, 9 employees reported directly to Plaintiff Smith. Plaintiff Smith's duties were both public-facing and internal to the foundation. Plaintiff states her duties in the position were leading governance-aligned development and execution of a $34 million grant-making portfolio, advancing racial justice, healing, and systematic transformation, built strategy, staffing structures, and learning frameworks aligned with Baha'i principles of unity, human dignity, and collective flourishing, supervised senior directors, and cultivated an organizational culture rooted in reflection, accountability, and belonging. Partnered closely with finance, grants, management, and operations to ensure mission, resources, and practice were fully aligned. Designed and facilitated spiritually informed covenings, learning journeys, and narrative initiatives. From June 2023 to January 2025, Plaintiff Smith reported to Laura Herrick in her position of Executive Director and then CEO of Wayfarer Foundation. Plaintiff Smith's performance reviews at all times were excellent, while reporting to Executive Director CEO Laura Herrick. Plaintiff received merit increases and bonuses based on her excellent work in 2023 and 2024, and initially in 2025. Okay, so now going back to that document that I pulled up. Oh, do I still have it? Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, we can actually see that she did receive a $5,000 bonus. In 2024 or year ending 2024. And a 3,000 bonus in the year ending 2023. That's a lot more than her previous, her predecessor got. So she must have been doing something right. In or around October 2024, plaintiff became aware of repeated statements and decisions by the organization's founder, defendant Steve Sarowitz, that revealed a pattern of hostility toward Muslims, including the Nation of Islam, also known as Black Muslims. Sarowitz showed open animosity to individuals expressing solidarity with the Palestine people who are facing a humanitarian crisis. As a practicing Muslim, a member of the Nation of Islam, plaintiff was made to feel targeted and alienated in internal communications and decision-making spaces and was treated hostilely when she spoke to Steve Sarowitz about her beliefs. So I remember Shane Norman claimed that when he posted about BLM, Black Lives Matter, that was when he noticed the attitudes towards him started to escalate. And then he was sacked for sexual harassment. But the question is, would he have been sacked if he hadn't been posting about Black Lives Matter? On or about October 2024, Plaintiff Smith attended a conference in South Dakota. The gathering of relatives where individual defendant Sarowitz, founder and board chair of Defendants Foundation, also was present. The event was sponsored in part by Indigenous peoples. During the conference, Defendant Sarowitz, after an Indigenous elder, expressed solidarity with the Palestine community. Remember, Sarowitz goes on all of these podcasts, yeah? I've watched a lot of his interviews, talking about how important world unity is and how we should all love each other and how women should speak up and how we should be against discrimination and act in unity. After an Indigenous elder expressed solidarity with the Palestinian community, Steve made statements showing racial and religious bias. During the conference, Sarowitz confronted participants from various religions, Foundation colleagues, and argued hostilely about his position supporting the Israeli side of the event. If anyone disagreed with him, He would become angry, and people reported they felt threatened. Plaintiffs spoke to him about his behavior. The executive at Sony as well, Danny Greenberg, I think it was, actually expressed in an email how concerned he was about Steve Sarowitz when the online feud / online smear campaign was put into action. That shows you the level of hostility he must have been showing for that guy, for that Sony executive to be like, you know what, I'm not so concerned about the about the impact of the negative impact of the feud, but or the perceived feud, but Steve Sarowitz, he's really concerning. The defendant foundation staff who reported to plaintiff, including plaintiff Smith, who attended the conference, were shocked and humiliated by Sarowitz's behavior, considering the foundation's core values. Sarowitz's conduct showed not only racial bias and religious bias, but were not aligned with the tenets of the foundation. Plaintiff attempted to discuss Sarowitz's behavior with him at the conference, but he reacted with anger. After the conference, employees who attended reported feeling fear towards defendant Sarowitz's presence in the office. This is very telling. After the October 2024 conference, plaintiff and other defendant Wayfarer Foundation staff who are perceived as supporting Palestinian causes or part of Muslim communities were questioned in terms of religious beliefs, loyalty, and trustworthiness. This focus led to an environment of hostility, exclusion, and religious stereotyping. These attitudes directly impacted plaintiffs' participation in leadership discussions, creating a hostile and discriminatory work environment. The Baha'i faith also says it supports all religions. After the October 2024 conference, the executive director refused to allow Sarowitz to come to the foundation office, but he eventually came and apologized to the staff for his behavior. In January 2025, the executive director, CEO Laura Hurick, took a leave of absence. Plaintiff then reported directly to Sarowitz. On 14th March 2025. So I just wanted to say as well, another thing that had come up in some of the unsealed documents back in, gosh, I don't even know when it was now. I guess it was January or February of this year, so that's 2026. There was an email from, oh, hey Kayla. Do I think this suit would go further? I know you have missed so many lives. Missed you. Do I think the suit would go further? I really hope she goes all the way with it. She certainly seems like someone with a lot going on for herself. She's very well established. So yeah, no, it wasn't. I wasn't going to show the Claire Iab email. I was going to, because we're now talking about this whole pro-Israel thing. And I'm sorry, but I don't think this has anything to do with religion. The religion is a cover. It has nothing to do with being anti-Semitic either. Okay, so we have this. I think it's, is it this one? Just double check. Yes. Okay, so this is an email exchange from January 2nd, 2025. So this is in between her having that conference and then the meeting she's about to talk about. I'm just giving some context of what is going on with this guy behind the scenes. This is from Steve Sarowitz, and he hardly handed over any communications in his discovery. But this is an email to a guy called David Keyes. And it says, David, meet Brian Friedman, the attorney who is running Wayfarer Studios' case against the NY Times, which blocked, and Blake Lively. Brian, David is the person who can make Sage's video go viral. David, I spoke with Brian and we are both on board with engaging your services ASAP to do this. Elise, can you please set up a meeting later today or tomorrow with Brian, David, and me to discuss? Brian, who else would you like at this meeting? I wonder if Jed Wallace was there. So yeah, this guy, David Keyes, who can apparently make Sage Steele's content go viral. So Sage Steele was Brian Friedman's old client, who was like a sports commentary content creator who Brian had represented. I forget who they were suing, but it was some big corporation. Very right wing. And she came on and did this video saying, I don't normally talk about celebrity gossip, but this is such an important case. I feel like I have to make a video about it. And she was like the first person after the lawsuit was filed to do this video. So this is who, this was the campaign that they said was organic, by the way. So yeah, this is who was CC'd on this email. David Keyes, American representative and human rights activist, as long as they're his human rights. I'm just going to get rid of your comment so you can see. When do we get Sarowitz and Seinfeld posting their pics while cosplaying as IDF soldiers? I mean, Sarowitz literally he's had fundraisers for IDF soldiers at Wayfarer theatres. I was saying this like months ago, and the problem is like when you start saying this, people immediately accuse you of being anti-Semitic or making up conspiracies, and I'm like, this is not conspiracy. And again, if you watch any of the Les Wexner deposition deep dive, you will see how blatantly obvious it is what's going on here. You're glad that I can tie gossip into these more serious topics. Well, this is what I've been trying to say, because I don't watch a lot of political content. I actually don't enjoy political content at all. But what annoys me is that political commentators stay very much in their own life. That, like, I find talking about politics so boring, because it's just like watching pantomime now. Anyone in politics is not there to look after our interests. They are there to look after their own interests. And so, yeah, I just think that you can talk about political commentators being paid, and like, you know, like the guy that I did the interview with from the UK. He was just a TikToker, quite a small following in the sort of single, I think he had like a few hundred or maybe 1,000 followers on TikTok. But one of his videos went viral and it was about Tommy Robinson. And he got a DM from an ex-IDF guy working for the UK government, not directly, but he had his own agency. But he was like, if you post content, we'll give you £50 a week. That is how common this stuff is. And it's like, I don't know. I just think a lot more people should be understanding how many people are making propaganda for very little money. Yes, Baldoni did host an ADL entertainment dinner in 2017, which I found completely by accident because I was doing a deep dive into Michael Jackson. Do not get me started about Michael Jackson because I've been so upset with the conspiracies. Oh my God, I can't even discuss it right now. I'm going to do another live on Saturday, maybe tomorrow, about Lady Victoria Harvey, and I'm going to go into some of those con artists. But yeah, I'm sticking to this tonight. Was the guy Dear Kaleidoscope? I forget now, but he told me about a musician that was doing. There was a TikToker that did a song about being gay, and it is just so weird because it's like, yeah, I just can't even get my head around how it's really difficult to trust anyone for being authentic, for being real these days. But anyway, I don't think it was Dear Kaleidoscope. I'm not sure who Dear Kaleidoscope is. Right, so David Keyes, sorry, I'm getting distracted. He was an Israeli-American representative and human rights activist who, up until 2018, was Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu's foreign press spokesman. So he was born in America. He was born in LA, and he was the Israeli Prime Minister's press spokesman. And would you believe, would it shock you to hear that he's had 14 allegations of sexual misconduct against him in 2018? So he had to resign. Can we see? Yeah. So David Keyes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's US-born foreign press spokesman, resigned Wednesday. This is on December the 12th, 2018, several months after allegations of sexual misconduct were reported in the US and Israeli press. The accusations made by a number of women, so it's 14 women, including then New York State Senate candidate Julia Salazar, dated back to Keyes' time as a human rights blah blah blah. He's honestly, the guy's career path is so problematic. Julia Salazar sprang to Okay, I'm not going to read that. In September, there was an article which said David Keyes was a disgrace to women for years. Who let him get away with it? Everybody in the pro-Israel world, it seems, knew David Keyes. They knew him as an advocate for human rights around the world, as an articulate defender of the state of Israel. You know who else is an advocate for human rights? Hugh Hefner, Alan Dershowitz. That is how they describe themselves. It's their human rights, not everybody else's. As an articulate defender of the state of Israel, as a provocateur skilled at coming up with viral stunts guaranteed to get media attention, but many in that world, it appears, knew of Yeah, so he's very similar to that guy I was talking about the other day, Milo Yiannopoulos, who worked for Steve Bannon. Like, it just becomes so clear how many of these kind of people have been involved in perpetuating all of this content that we've been like basically just consuming for the last, it's like 10 years now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu must recall ambassadors to the United States Ron Dermer over reports that he failed to pass along a warning that spokesman David Keyes posed a danger to women, a member of the Knesset said on Sunday. So I think there was like one paper, I forget which one, it might have been the Wall Street Journal, but he was banned from going to their office because that many women complained about him. So it took from September, when all this stuff about the allegations was being talked about, till December for him to actually resign. A spokesman for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced Thursday that he is taking time off after 12 women accused him of inappropriate behavior, including sexual assault. In light of the false and misleading accusations against me, and in order not to distract from the important work of the Prime Minister, Anyway, that's a few articles about him. But yeah, this is who Steve Sarowitz thought would be a good idea to hire. Oh, you want to know something? You want to know who else is friends with him? Let me just get it up, and then we'll go back to the lawsuit. Sorry, a little bit slow, as per usual. You guessed it, another. Not only is he an advocate for the ADL, like he literally, oh my God, I watched a video about the exhibition that Scooter Braun put on during 2024 about that music festival. But in 2017, Scooter Braun went to Israel and posted on Instagram, got to spend the last 2 days speaking with and getting to know David Keyes, spokesperson to the Israeli Prime Minister, about this country and their ideas of growth and prosperity for all in the region. The guy is thoughtful and intelligent and has spent his career in human rights before taking the job. This is an amazing, intense, and complicated region, and I'm happy to see someone like David playing such an important role. Happy to have met him and look forward to a long friendship. Hashtag smart guy, hashtag good guy. You gotta laugh. Anyway, everything is now making sense. We were in the right about this. We were not wrong. Excuser is literally, he is literally at the scene of every crime. Quite literally, he was at the scene of Camilla Sterling's crime. Are Keyes and Dershowitz friends? I'm sure. Yeah, that was what I was going to say, actually. Sorry, I forgot to say. Dershowitz was the guest of Netanyahu UN dinner with Brett Ratner, who is literally in Epstein's New York apartment with underage victims, and Jean-Luc Brunel, a pedophile as well. That was Netanyahu's guest at a UN dinner. I think that was last year. So yeah, I would say that I don't know if Keyes and Dershowitz are friends. I did look for Keyes in the Epstein files. His name didn't come up, but then it might have been a little bit before before his time, if you know what I mean, because maybe he didn't come up on their radar. The guy who did yeah, I know, right? Him and Trump go way back, and it's even weirder than that because Brett Ratner has been sort of like exiled to Israel. Apparently, he lives next door to Netanyahu now. But suddenly, in light of the Epstein files being released, on the same day, this Melania Trump movie comes out in cinemas, directed by Brett Ratner, and Trump announces that they're going to make the film that they did, the franchise of, with the other one that was in the Epstein files. Oh my God, the black guy, Tucker. Is it Kevin Tucker? Oh, I've forgotten their names. Useless sometimes. But he was friends with Michael Jackson as well. Fast and Furious. Is it Fast and Furious? No, Rush Hour. Sorry, Rush Hour. They're going to make Rush Hour 4 because Donald Trump wants it to come out. It's just crazy. Really, really crazy how much Donald Trump is trying to cause a distraction to his involvement. But yeah. Anyway, let me get back to the. It's just mad how everything connects up. It really is. So yeah, in January 2025, the executive director Laura Hurich has taken a leave of absence, and Celeste now has to report directly to Sarowitz. So in March, who's now in contact with David Keyes, the pro-Israel Schiller. The Defendant Foundation staff who reported to plaintiff, including plaintiff Smith, who attended the conference, was shocked and humiliated by Sarowitz's behaviour, considering... Oh, wait. Did I miss a page? Oh yeah, I read that already. Sorry. Right. On March 14th, 2025, plaintiff was invited to a breakfast meeting with defendant Sarowitz at his home. Plaintiff was reporting directly to Sarowitz, who had become the new interim executive director, CEO. Oh my God, he was the CEO and chairman. Immediately, Sarowitz began to ask Plaintiff Smith invasive probing questions about the Quran and her Muslim religion and its beliefs. Plaintiff felt the conversation was hostile, discriminatory, and unwelcome. Defendant Sarowitz then questioned plaintiff about her political beliefs, specifically as it relates to her humanitarian support for the people of Palestine. Plaintiff openly pushed back on Sarowitz's negative comments on her religion and its practices, as she would, as she was within the rights. I'm sure I read through at least 2 depositions of Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath where they have literally read out the policy handbook stating that you should not be asking people to divulge this stuff in the workplace. During the breakfast meeting with Sarowitz, pressed plaintiff to assess the loyalty of other staff and made veiled accusations. He stated, she couldn't have done it alone when referring to the former executive director, Herrick, keeping him out of the office, and other issues between the two. Defendant Sarowitz expressed a strong preference for hiring Baha'i staff, including bringing back a former Baha'i employee and promoting other Baha'i applicants previously not selected. Plaintiff, who was primarily responsible for hiring, stated clearly that hiring based on religious identity was inappropriate and that equity required competency-based and values-based hiring practices. Again, plaintiff did not agree with Sarowitz that she would hire individuals based only on their Baha'i faith. Wow. Chris Tucker, yes, sorry, Chris Tucker. Chris Tucker and Brett Ratner directed the Rush Hour franchise of movies, and Brett Ratner was not extradited, he was self-exiled to Israel, and now Donald Trump wants to bring him back so they can make part 4. And Chris Tucker is, I'm sorry, he's all over that plane. He was on the plane more than Clinton, I think, or Andrew at least. He's on it more than a lot of people. And he was really good friends with Michael Jackson. Do I think Sarowitz secretly suspects every Muslim having dual loyalty to the Ayatollah? Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he's just probably that paranoid and delusional. He sounds like a psychopath. I did think he was a psychopath several months ago, but this just confirms it. They do think that everyone thinks like them. So yeah, it's concerning to say the least. But also it's against all of their work policies and it's against employment law to carry on like this. Justin wasn't kidding when he invoked the Iron Dome, honestly. I saw something else today, which I don't think I've seen it before because I've not really been looking too much at there's been nothing new on the docket, so I've not really been looking too much at the old filings, but something that came up was another Baha'i Bros group chat with that guy, he's kind of quite well known. Rainn Wilson, there's another one. I think he's British. But anyway, yeah, some of the stuff they were saying that on that was really disturbing. They are very disturbing people, these people. Okay, so the March 14th, 2025 breakfast conversation with Sarowitz marked a significant escalation in the discriminatory, hostile environment and led to retaliatory behavior that followed, including plaintiff's termination. After plaintiff advised Sarowitz in the March 14th, 2025 meeting that she objected to and was offended by Sarowitz's statements about her Muslim faith and the issue of Palestine, and his request that plaintiff favour candidates who practice Baha'i religion, Sarowitz denied plaintiff Smith any consideration for the interim executive director position after Herrick resigned, instead hiring a white younger candidate, Jennifer Weigel, a member and practitioner of the Baha'i faith. This is where he went wrong with Jamie Heath. He's just hiring people because of their faith. He doesn't care whether they can do a good job or not. Plaintiff was more qualified for the executive director position after Herrick resigned, but was not interviewed or considered for the position. Defendant Sarowitz did not mention the open position to plaintiff Smith. Plaintiff was explicitly prevented from being considered for the role of interim executive director, despite her tenure, seniority, and excellent qualifications. There was no open or transparent process for the selection, and the executive director position opportunity was never officially posted or made accessible to plaintiff Smith. This is exactly what I was describing about was happening in the Epstein files with Wexner and Epstein going to Harvard and Columbia University and the Ohio State University and having these leadership talks and granting money to ex alumni or whatever it is. And it's all like bringing people into the brotherhood. It's, wow. It's I don't want to say it's mind-blowing, but it's just like so obvious what's been going on. Like this stuff that people think they're paranoid, it really does exist. You have to be in with them or you're not getting the top job. In March 2025, at defendant Sarowitz's instructions, Wayfarer Foundation staff were pressured to participate in religious programming. During this time, staff were encouraged to take part in Ruhi courses, which are educational programs rooted in Baha'i teachings. While framed as professional development, these programs carried an explicit religious bias and were presented without consideration for religious diversity or inclusion. Regardless of religious belief, employees were required to attend. From the time of CEO Herrick's leave of absence in January 2025 to late March 2025, no person other than defendant Sarowitz was in the position of executive director or CEO. The interim executive director, Weigel, started her position in late March. Plaintiff knows she was treated in a disparate manner by defendant Sarowitz, where she was the best qualified for the executive director CEO position, but a younger white non-Muslim of the Baha'i faith, Jennifer Weigel, with little or no experience or skill to direct the Wayfarer Foundation, including the department's grant funding and public-facing community outreach, which plaintiff was senior director over. From March to the first weeks of April 2025, plaintiff was retaliated against by being excluded from strategy meetings and removed from decision-making spaces that she had previously led. Plaintiff was aware she was being undermined in terms of visibility and leadership circles in the defendant foundation. I know one of their, businesses that they used to fund was a black hip hop coffee shop. Now it explains why they stopped funding them. On March 31st, 2025, plaintiff suffered an injury in a fall while at home. Because of the fall, plaintiff was unable to work at all until April 11th, 2025. After April 11th, 2025, plaintiff, through her physician, sought and received accommodation under the ADEA to work part-time 4 hours a day. The restriction was granted by defendant Wayfarer's Pathways Human Resources Department by Laurie Kleiman. Now, I just couldn't believe this. I'm like, Wayfarer Pathways Human Resources Department by Laurie Kleiman. I read through those depositions where they were like, human resources? What's that all about then? Eh? Let me show you. Let me show you who this person was. Laurie Kleiman, HR trainer, mentor, and speaker. Classes, community, and concurrent sessions. HR topics. This was their HR person. Why could she not be the HR person for Wayfarer? She's got a little video there. Look at the brands she's worked with as well. Oh, it doesn't say it on there. I think it says it on the home page. Would it surprise you to learn she does courses? Our thrilled clients. Would it surprise you to learn that Paylocity is one of her thrilled clients, but not Wayfarer Studios? Very interesting. During plaintiff's time on restricted duty, interim executive director Weigel attempted repeatedly to have plaintiff work beyond her work restrictions so she could obtain quick wins for Steve and obtain the executive director position permanently. Plaintiff, in her discussion with Weigel, reminded her of defendant Wayfarer Foundation's stated values: unity and diversity, justice, spiritually, continuous learning, and that her behavior contradicted these principles. This exchange was another form of retaliation during protective medical leave. Weigel responded to plaintiff with, "Steve needs quick wins." The behavior of the interim executive director Weigel, and under the instruction of defendant Sarowitz, became so severe and hostile, plaintiff reached out and filed a discrimination complaint against executive director Weigel. Because of her harassing treatment during the time she was recuperating from a very serious and painful rib contusion and bruise. Ooh. Yeah. Plaintiff home after a possible fractured rib was asked which rib by interim executive director Weigel. Trust me, I have broken a rib twice and it is pain like you can never believe. And also you can't even do anything about it because it's not something they can repair. So you literally have to suffer until the bone repairs itself. And the only way the bone can repair itself is by you not moving. I did it once when I was a kid, and then I did it again as an adult. Though Weigel knew plaintiff was in severe pain and on an accommodated approved schedule, plaintiff should continue working on strategy documents and was denied an extension despite her accommodation status. Interim Director Weigel told plaintiff, "I know you're used to white people making rushed decisions, but that's not what this is." Plaintiff was shocked and offended by the racialized remark and knew requiring her to work during an approved time off, well over her restricted limit for an inquiry, was not legal under defendant's policies and procedures or federal or state law. Plaintiff was in physical pain and felt pressured by her executive director telling her she needed quick wins while in her interim position of executive director, so she could hold on to the position with Steve. Plaintiff knew that the Wayfarer Foundation had a race disparity problem from discussing the issue with her staff and reviewing a documentation of race bias in a paper written by an African American Wayfarer Foundation board member. Plaintiff knew this treatment by Weigel was retaliatory also for her recent formal complaint of discrimination and retaliation. The disability complaint was filed with a human resources contractor. So basically, they not only do they not care about Black people, they have tried to make it look like they are aligned with Black people, when in reality, they are discriminating against Black people and telling them, "I know you're Black, but we want you to only support white people." In April 2025, during a Wayfarer Foundation board meeting, plaintiff discussed 2 grant applications which were off-cycle requests. Defendant Sarowitz, though the grants were for $200,000 and $50,000, began to ask questions about the smaller application. The smaller application was for a Muslim health clinic in Chicago. Plaintiff experienced Sarowitz once again asked probing questions about a Black Muslim woman's grant and bias, race, and religious questions about whether the clinic had familial ties to Betty Shabazz, deceased, the widow of Malcolm X, deceased. The Shabazz family is African American and Muslim. The disparity in treatment was so glaring. Plaintiff Smith was deeply troubled by the racial and religious bias being conducted by defendant Sarowitz and condoned by the interim executive director, Jennifer Weigel, who was present. Plaintiff spoke up by answering all the questions but noted the disparity in treatment. In mid-April 2025, in a discussion with defendant Sarowitz about hiring defendant Sarowitz's nephew, plaintiff raised concerns about transparency. Defendant So he wanted to hire his nephew? I'm not surprised, but I just can't get over this guy. He's absolutely he's just a fraud. I knew it, but seeing it in black and white. In mid-April 2025, in a discussion with defendant Sarowitz about hiring defendant Sarowitz's nephew, plaintiff raised concerns about transparency. Remember that video as well that I found when he was talking about his daughter and how his immediate thought was to go and like blow up his daughter's neighbors when they complained about her noise? The guy's a freak. And I swear to God, someone talking about civil rights, someone needs to advocate for that guy who's in jail at the moment for apparently trying to commit arson at his house, because I have such a strong feeling that that guy has been set up by Steve Sarowitz. Defendant Sarowitz responded with visible escalating anger, saying, "Is there a problem with hiring my nephew? I want my nephew to be hired." The volume and tone was intimidating, hostile, and unwelcome. This interaction with defendant Sarowitz was coercive, inappropriate, and retaliatory in nature, and was done before several of plaintiff's colleagues. On April 23, 2025, plaintiff filed a formal discrimination retaliation complaint to defendant Wayfarer Foundation's leadership. Defendant Sarowitz, Weigel, and Wayfarer Pathways Chief Operating Officer Elise Lilwack and Human Resources Director Laurie Kelman She's filed a formal discrimination retaliation complaint to defendant Wayfarer Foundation's leadership, defendant Sarowitz, Weigel, and Wayfarer Pathways Chief Operating Officer Elise Lilwack and Human Resources Director Laurie Kelman. That was the woman whose website I just showed, who's been the Human Resources Manager for Paylocity. Included in the complaint, but not limited in content, the recent termination of Minito's contract, along with other developments, have raised deep concerns for me about the organisational climate of the Wayfarer Foundation. I have experienced the environment as increasingly inhospitable and believe I am being subjected to discriminatory treatment based on my religion, Muslim, and race, Black. After plaintiff and other employees formally complained to defendant's human resources contractor, the contract with the human resources consultant was abruptly terminated before an internal impartial discrimination review could occur on plaintiff's discrimination and retaliation complaint. This is how these people conduct their business. They have an LLC, they have a foundation that donates money to colleges so that the people who receive the money come and work for them, and then they have to do what they say. And if they don't do what they say, they're terminated. And then any trace of their misconduct becomes eradicated by getting rid of the person who was there. Meanwhile, this guy goes around saying he's trying to benefit humankind. Within 10 days of plaintiff making her formal complaint in April 2025, and while other complaints were pending, the defendants shut down defendant Wayfarer Foundation. So now we know why the foundation was shut down, because I remember there was some discussion going on about the possible reasons for it shutting down. Aside from the fact that it seems to have a multi-million dollar deficit in 2024. Hey, never believe a lie. You couldn't make it up. You couldn't make it up, could you? Unless your name's Steve Sarowitz, then you actually love making stuff up. Or Justin Baldoni. I'm telling you, there is something not right with these people's brains. There is some talk about Wexner. I've not seen it, but apparently he has talked a long time ago. I have seen him talking about, I don't understand why God gave me all this luck. It really doesn't make sense to me. Like, how did I get it all? But apparently he was a bit obsessed with demons, and he said he had a demon in him a long time ago, and he has gone on record saying it. But yeah, there is something wrong with these guys, honestly. Steve Sarowitz doesn't care about black people. Steve Sarowitz definitely 100% does not care about black people. It's all for the optics. It's all. I can't believe they have the cheek to make their podcast align with black people. And the sad thing is, a lot of these people that are going along with their narratives are doing it for the paycheck. I mean, respect to Celeste for actually standing up to these people, because she was on a flipping good salary, mate. She's on 350 grand a year. And she was like, I'm not putting up with this shit. Well, she got fired, but I mean, she stood up to them before that happened. I want to know though, does the brain being harmed come before being a billionaire? I think it's the two things are synonymous. I genuinely don't think you become a billionaire without your brain being wired like this. I don't think it's like, oh, I'm a billionaire now, I'm going to act like this. I think it was always in them. I think they've always acted like this. That's how they became a billionaire. Right. On May 2nd, 2025, and less than 4 years into its sunset promise during the pendency of plaintiff's unresolved complaint of discrimination, defendant Sarowitz issued the following statement. Over the past 4 years, so in case you missed it, Never Believe Lie and Kayla, when she joined, basically she was headhunted for her role, at Wayfarer. And she said, well, I need a guarantee. And they said, okay, you're going to have this job for at least 15 years. And now, 4 years in to the existence of the company, he's shutting it down. That's what sunset promise means. Over the past 4 years, Wayfarer Foundation has supported dozens of grantee partners in fulfilling their missions. I am so incredibly proud of the impact this organization has made and deeply grateful for our staff, board, donors, and partners. Upon unanimous decision of the board of directors, today we will begin the process of sunsetting the foundation. We will honour all of our current grant commitments as we carefully wind down operations over the next several weeks. Although the Wayfarer Foundation is closing, my personal commitment to giving remains strong, especially, I'm not going to say it, and I'm dedicated to making an impact on society through the ongoing mission and work. Making an impact on society? Are you kidding me? We don't need this impact on society. When are you going to get that through your head? We understand that this news may come as a surprise, and we will be actively working over the next several weeks to ensure all matters are concluded with care and attention. With gratitude, Steve Sarowitz. They have these sort of like, what do they say on their emails? Like, oh my God. Let me see if it's on the exhibit. They put their like Baha'i sayings on the bottom of their emails, like one planet, one people, peace. Shut up. It's so crazy. How can you put that on your email signature? It's actually sickening. Plaintiff learned that all other staff continued to work at Defendant Wayfarer Foundation until June 30th, 2025, including the staff that reported directly to Plaintiff Smith. After 30th June 2025, 83% of the former Wayfarer Foundation staff was transferred to Pathways doing philanthropic work in a department of Wayfarer Pathways. The person who was designated to perform the leadership role plaintiff previously performed is a younger male employee who is of the Baha'i religion without a disability or accommodation. Great. At the time of the abrupt termination of the human resources representative contractor, other complaints were pending from those employees with protected classification, including the initial complaint plaintiff filed against. Interesting. Interim Executive Director Weigel, during her interference with her protected accommodations. So Weigel's got a complaint as well? After plaintiff was terminated by phone by Wayfarer Pathways, plaintiff learned that she was the only employee singled out to have 2 human resources personnel present in her termination. On May 2nd, 2025, less than 2 weeks after filing her discrimination retaliatory complaint with Pathways Human Resources, a phone call was scheduled with plaintiff while she was working 4 hours per week with restrictions from home. The retained and transitioned employees of Wayfarer Foundation continued the work previously performed by Defendant Wayfarer Foundation at Defendant Wayfarer Pathways in a department created called Private Giving. The retained employees were predominantly Baha'i faith. Plaintiff was terminated in a telephone call on May 2nd, 2025. While she was working in an accommodated position from home with an injury. We just check the dates again. So she was terminated she made her formal complaint in April. On May 2nd, he announces that they're shutting. He transfers everyone over to his corporation. Oh, no, sorry. Everyone stayed until June 30th, and then 83% of staff were transferred to the corporation Pathways. Meanwhile, she was terminated on May 2nd. I think they've got the date wrong there. The retained and transitioned employees of Wayfarer Foundation continued the work previously performed by Defendant Wayfarer. Yeah, right. Yeah, they worked in a department called Private Giving. But she was terminated in a telephone call on May 2nd, 2025, while she was working in an accommodated position from home with an injury. Defendant Wayfarer Pathways Chief Operating Officer Elise Litwack and Robert Henderson, a Baha'i, stated the Wayfarer Foundation was sunsetting and closing at the end of June 2025. Got it. So on the same day that she's terminated, which is 10 days after she's made her complaint for discrimination, she's fired, and everyone else is transferred or is kept on until June 30th, and then 83% of people are transferred to the corporation. Okay, got it. Plaintiff Smith was retaliated against by being terminated on May 2nd, 2025, I think she means, prior to the completion of defendant Wayfarer's 15-year sunset provision. Plaintiff Smith was asked to sign a severance agreement, resolving completely any rights she had based on all federal and state civil rights law for a 2-month period of wages. Plaintiff Smith filed an equal employment opportunity charge. Plaintiff detrimentally relied upon defendants' promises that the employment with Wayfarer Foundation and Wayfarer Pathways was stable and had over 12 years at least of function prior to its sunsetting. Terminating plaintiff in violation of the ADA were intentional and willful, in deliberate disregard and with reckless indifference to the rights of plaintiff Smith. As a direct and proximate result of defendants' violations of plaintiff Smith's rights under the title ADEA and ADA, as stated, plaintiff's terms, conditions, and privileges of employment were adversely affected, as were her rights under Illinois state law, Human Rights Act. Defendants broke their promises to plaintiff, where she planned and expected a long, productive tenure with the defendants, but such promises, which plaintiff relied on, were broken to plaintiff's detriment. As a direct and proximate result of defendants' wrongful acts and omissions, plaintiff has sustained injuries and damages, including but not limited to loss of earnings and earning capacity, loss of career opportunities, loss of medical insurance and other fringe and pension benefits, mental anguish, physical and emotional distress, humiliation and embarrassment, loss of professional reputation, and loss of the ordinary pleasures of everyday life, including the right to pursue the gainful employment in the field of non-profit management. I would say, yeah. His love, his love about only. It's so weird how similar this is to Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein. Although Justin Baldoni is not quite as good as moving money around as Baldoni hasn't got the money laundering skills as Epstein. Oh my God, speaking of money, yeah, there was something on this woman's website. Let me go back to it. The HR woman, yeah. This woman does HR classes. I mean, how they couldn't get an HR department is absolutely, there's just no words. There's just no reason why they couldn't have had an HR. She says something about not getting in the way of making money. It's like, really? Oh, here we go. Yeah, I didn't I didn't read it out, but it's on her website. So she says, Laurie combines a strong business acumen and a love of people into a successful career as an entrepreneur, trainer, and speaker. She approaches HR.
Her family's commercial photography business, employing 250 team members in 5 states. Working her way up to VP of Operations, she learned the business of people.
She's got her own video going on. was thinking it's actually better than the Wayfarer, the Wayfarer website. She approaches HR from a business perspective, eliminates the clutter, and gets you the information you need and back to your number one priority, making money. Right. Anyway, I think they got rid of her. So she couldn't do a review. So these are the counts of her complaint. Oh, let me look at the, let me. Their assistant's gonna take the class. Yeah, didn't Baldoni actually send his assistant? Yeah, it was in the deposition. I think there was a few more pages I didn't read because I've done so many episodes on the deposition. Like at this point, I'm ready for the trial. I think she has a very good case. I think once you start looking at who actually supports him and how artificial it is and what their agenda is, I think she does have a strong case. I'm relatively hopeful, but I don't know. I guess we'll still have to see. We're still waiting on the judge's decision on the sanctions and what was the other thing? The motion. What's it called? Not motion. Motion. Yeah, it is motion something. You know what I mean. The Wayfarer parties. Summary judgment. That's it. Summary judgment. Right. Sarowitz is a psycho. I think he wanted to transition to donor-advised funds. They're better for spending and taxes, but couldn't just abruptly shut down Wayfarer Foundation unless he could blame the woman suing his lover for every bad thing that happens. Right. I think he could be onto something there. Summary judgment, yes. It's so funny. Baldoni wrote the SH rules, but didn't remember them at the deposition. He's so creepy. I know, right? I mean, I'm just kind of a bit over him now. I'm really over him. Also, he looked so weird. Did you see how weird his face looked when he turned up at this court? He was really mutating into Simon Cowell. I don't think he's going to get the good-looking role anymore. The sex symbol that he thinks he is. Right, let me carry on. Okay, so count one. Plaintiff repeats, realleges, and incorporates paragraph 1 through 65 as set forth here and above by reference. Thank God I don't have to read it again. Defendants Wayfarer Foundation, Wayfarer Pathways, and Steve Sarowitz individually have subjected Plaintiff Smith to sex, race, and religious discrimination in violation of Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, including but not limited to the following acts as set forth in the statement of facts herein and above. Recruiting plaintiff aggressively from her place of employment with promises of high wages and advancement with a sunset at Wayfarer Foundation of at least 15 years. Denying plaintiffs similar and or same opportunities as compared to her white non-Muslim co-workers with respect to the opportunity to progress to the executive director position and replacing plaintiff with a white male Baha'i after she was terminated on May 2nd, 2025 in the transferred Department of Private Giving Wayfarer Pathways. Plaintiff was treated disparately with hostility, anger, and tone after March 14, 2024, in the manner in which defendant Sarowitz talked to her. Now that call with Claire Ayab hits different. Not allowing plaintiff to perform her duties without bias based on race and or religion. Removing plaintiff from leadership decisions after plaintiff did not agree with defendant Sarowitz. Having plaintiff evaluate grants and fund giving using race and religion as a criterion. Despite plaintiff's excellent reviews repeatedly implying she was not trustworthy. Projecting again. That's what these guys do. Project. They actually project what is going on in their head onto other people. And the thing about this woman's employment history as well is she is used to dealing with some of these big corporations. And like I said at the beginning of my live stream, applying for these grant funds is such a specialist field. Like the wording that has to be used, you have to really understand what they're looking for, what they're asking for, and speak their language. This woman gets it. He's picked the wrong one here. Because Claire Ayab, when she was on that call with him, like she was still in a position where her movie hadn't been released yet. Do you know what I mean? So she had to really try and keep Sarowitz sweet on that call, same as Blake Lively. The whole time she was doing that movie, she had to try and keep them sweet. All these people are like, why didn't they say anything at the time? Embarrassing and humiliating plaintiff by terminating her from her position abruptly, affecting her reputation in the non-profit expert management community. I just hope all of the people that she has to deal with has heard about what a tyrant this guy is. Someone needs to open the Sarowitz files. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. Defendant Sarowitz making hostile and offensive, unwelcome remarks about her religion and her position regarding the humanitarian crisis in Palestine, which he assumed to be Muslim. No surprises that he's completely ignorant. Creating a race and Muslim hostile work environment by allowing comments to foster a race and religious bias atmosphere. See, that's another thing what these people don't appreciate, these pro-Israel people that do not even come from Israel. They've just adopted it as a cause. They're believing the lies of their own government. And then we find out that his press representative has 14 counts of sexual allegations against him. Let me calm down. It's hostile. It's so hostile. Creating a race and Muslim hostile work environment by allowing comments to foster a race and religious bias atmosphere. Requiring plaintiff to hire relatives and those of Baha'i faith even if they were not best qualified. Not promptly and remedially addressing complaints made to human resources based on protected classifications under race and or religious hostile work environment. Closing the Wayfarer Foundation and reconstituting reconstituting it as a department in Wayfarer Pathways Private Giving, and staffing the entity with individuals predominantly of the Baha'i religion instead of addressing the issues of discrimination and retaliation, creating an intimidating and hostile work environment for plaintiffs after she objected to racial and religious bias discriminatory statements made by Steve Sarowitz in March 2025, going against their own work procedure and policy guidelines. Baldoni said it himself. They wanted it to be a Baha'i-inspired organization, but not coming under Baha'i faith law. Speaking of Baha'i as well, like when I first looked up the religion, Iran, who obviously are very much in the news at the moment, the enemies of Israel. Iran has banned the Baha'i faith and classified it as a cult. I can see where they're coming from. As a direct and proximate result of said disparate treatment acts and omissions under Title VII Civil Rights Act of 1965, as amended by defendants, agents and employees, plaintiff has suffered and will continue to suffer lost wages and pension benefits, loss of earning capacity, loss of reputation, loss of her professional esteem in her field of non-profit management, and loss of reputation, loss of dignity and enjoyment of life, extreme mental and emotional distress, pain and suffering, nervousness, embarrassment and humiliation, requiring treatment, all past, present and future. I can literally believe it because this woman moved to a different city. She probably believed that this organization was trying to do good things. And so to come to find out that it wasn't, I mean, they were at one point they were giving funds to Muslim communities, and then the next minute she finds out that her boss like literally wants to get rid of them. Must be really, really traumatic. And she must be like doing so much like thinking it over and regretting and thinking, oh my God, why did I shouldn't have, do you know what I mean? She must be going through so much stress, and she's a mother of 3. I don't know how old her kids are, but still. Wherefore, Celeste Smith demands judgment against defendants Wayfarer Foundation, Wayfarer Pathways, and Steve Sarowitz for all damages allowable under federal law in excess of $75,000, as plaintiff is found to be entitled, plus interest, costs, reasonable attorney fees, and all injunctive relief under Title VII, including back pay of all economic damages and/or reinstatement of plaintiff terms and conditions of employment, including all cost and attorney fees as allowed by statute. Count 2. Plaintiff repeats, realleges, and incorporates paragraph 1 through 68 as set forth here and above by reference. Plaintiff Celeste Smith, an African-American female Muslim, engaged in protective activity in 2024 and 2025, and has sought, as a member of the Executive Board of Defendant Wayfarer Foundation, to carry out defendants' rules and regulations and state and federal laws. In April 2025, plaintiff engaged in protective activity by filing complaints of race and religious discrimination with defendant's human resources contractor. And after the human resources contractor representative was abruptly terminated with defendant Wayfarer Pathways, human resources director and its executives. Protected activity, so that's protected from retaliation, I guess that means. As direct consequence of plaintiff's protected activity by asserting her rights for others and herself, defendants individually and or personally have subjected plaintiff Smith to retaliation and retaliatory harassment, creating a hostile retaliatory environment and creating adverse changes in the terms and conditions of her employment, including but not limited to talking to plaintiff about her religion, expressing disdain for her Muslim faith or others who practice the faith, not trusting plaintiff even though her performance reviews were consistently excellent and you gave her bonuses more than any of the people previously in her position. Refusing to consider plaintiff for the interim executive director position, instead hiring a less qualified, non-African American, white Baha'i person with no experience in the field, who's probably, if he hasn't already, going to sexually harass the female members of staff, because that's what they do over there. Not trusting plaintiff, even though her performance reviews were consistently eliminating plaintiff from attendance at leadership meetings of the executive board. Talking to plaintiff in a hostile and angry tone in front of her colleagues and direct reports. Requiring plaintiff to evaluate grant applications for blacks and Muslims in a more restrictive manner, asking questions of plaintiff which were illegal and placing a higher level of scrutiny on recipients. Terminating plaintiff overnight without any notice, even though she was on the executive team. Replacing plaintiff with a younger non-African American male Baha'i faith employee. As a direct and proximate result of said retaliatory acts and omissions by defendant Wayfarer Foundation, its agents and employees, and defendant Wayfarer Pathways, and individually defendant Sarowitz, plaintiff has suffered and will continue to suffer lost wages and pension benefits, loss of earnings capacity, loss of dignity and enjoyment of life, extreme mental and emotional distress, pain and suffering, nervousness, embarrassment and humiliation, loss of reputation requiring treatment, all past, present and future. Wherefore, plaintiff Celeste Smith demands judgment against defendant Wayfarer Foundation, defendant Wayfarer Pathways, and defendant Steve Sarowitz individually for all damages allowable under federal law. As Law Title 7 in excess of $75,000, as plaintiff is found to be entitled past and future plus interest costs and reasonable attorney's fees. Blah, 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 blah. Plaintiff repeats, realleges, and incorporates paragraph 1 through 73 as set forth here and above by reference. This is count 3. Just checking the chat. You've been trying to do research on Steve Sarowitz. It's almost like anything bad about him has been scrubbed from the internet. Yes, this is what they do. There's not anything, the thing is, there's nothing negative about them. I did, you know how I do it? I put in Steve Sarowitz exposed, or Steve Sarowitz lawsuit, or Steve Sarowitz arrested. But even for that, not much comes up. But I can tell you that if you put in Palos City lawsuits, there's definitely a lot of lawsuits on record. As far as Steve Sarowitz goes, he's all over YouTube. He's literally the definition of no fucks given. Like, because he's so sure of himself, he doesn't think he doesn't think he's got anything to hide. So if you look at his LinkedIn, you've got all the pro IDF posts there. You've got him reposting that Mandy Mangan, that stupid YouTube channel, on his LinkedIn. In his interviews, he tells on himself. No, he wasn't arrested. Sorry. I just put that in when I'm trying to find dirt on people, like, because they use the algorithms to cover up any bad stuff about them. Like, you know what I found today? Okay, so I've done a lot of research into Tony Busby, yeah? And I had a suspicion that Tony Busby was suing corporations and not paying his victims, because that's exactly what Tom Girardi did. And his business model to me seems the exact same as Tom Girardi. Yeah, it's a pyramid scheme. They live a very lavish lifestyle, and you see all these headlines going, he's won this millions of dollars for his clients, da 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 da. But then what he's doing is he's spending that money on himself. He's paying off all the people around him that he needs to pay off so that he can carry on with his fraud. And one day it catches up with him. And then he's telling his clients, "Oh, I've put the money in a trust for you, so you know you'll get more money out. You'll do better out of it." But then he's not releasing the funds to the clients. I found today, buried, because I've never come across it before, a whole bunch of articles saying that his clients are trying to sue him because he hasn't handed over the money. But yeah, so if I'm trying to find stuff on people that isn't going to show up in the algorithm, I'll just put in stuff like arrested or lawsuit or exposed or controversy. It just helps. It doesn't always bring things up, but it just helps a little bit. But no, I doubt if he will be arrested, unfortunately. But that David Keys guy, SD, who I reported on earlier in the video, there's this guy called David Keys. He was working for the Israel Prime Minister, and I'm sure he does all of that stuff as well. All of these IDF spy, Israeli spy guys specialize in. That's where it comes from. That's where the technology comes from. They can hack Facebook accounts. That's what the UK police use to hack into people's social media accounts. It's Israel technology. But anyway, let me not get too distracted. So yeah, we're on count 3 of the complaint. So this is the violation of the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. Plaintiff at the time of her termination on May 2nd, 2025 was 52 years old. She looks good. Very good. A lot better than Shisty. The person who defendant Sarowitz selected for the interim executive director position at defendant Wayfarer Foundation was more than 8 years younger than plaintiff. Plaintiff was not interviewed or considered for the open position, though she was substantially more qualified than Jennifer Weigel. After plaintiff was terminated in 2025, a younger employee, at least 8 years younger than plaintiff Smith, was selected as defendant Wayfarer Pathways to lead private giving staff that plaintiff directed as senior program director. Age was one of the factors in defendant's decision-making, as younger people were both selected into positions plaintiff was denied, though she was more qualified. Plaintiff Smith has not been contacted to continue her career at defendant Wayfarer Pathways since her May 2nd, 2025 abrupt termination. Seems pretty obvious why she was terminated. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's wrongful acts and omissions, plaintiff Smith has sustained injuries and damages, including, but not limited to, loss of earnings and earning capacity, loss of career opportunities, loss of fringe and pension benefits, mental anguish, physical and emotional distress, humiliation and embarrassment, loss of professional reputation, and loss of the ordinary pleasures of everyday life, including the right to pursue the gainful employment of her choice. Wherefore, Plaintiff Smith respectfully requests that this court enter judgment in her favour on her ADEA account and allows her all damages allowed under the statute, including attorney fees and costs. Count 4. Violation of the Americans with Disability Act, ADA. You think Celeste was going to... I mean... Sorry, I'm reading two comments at the same time. You wonder if Steve Sarowitz believes a great guy or knows that he's protected no matter what he says, something very nefarious happening. I just suspected it, but to see it in black and white, yeah, I do think... I think we've not really spoken about his wife as well. Like, his wife is very mixed up in his business. And she does property. Just like Les Wexner. Property, money laundering, Israel. There's a lot of dots which could probably be connected. And then meanwhile, sacking black people, discriminating and being sexist to women, and getting immigrants locked up. That's what he does. You think Celeste probably figured out they were full of it, but maybe believed they'd actually elevate her instead of sidelining her? Possibly. I don't know. I mean, it's really difficult to know. Because she'd been there for 2 years when this happens. And obviously she must have read about all the "it ends with us" stuff. But yeah, I mean, you would think that a foundation like that would have your back. It's like he thinks employment law doesn't apply to him, which maybe it hasn't, because we don't know the half of what went on at Paylocity. What was I going to say as well? Going back to the Sarowitz thing, comparing him to Wexner, Les Wexner. I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh yeah, about the police. Yeah, that guy that got arrested. The guy that got arrested for the arson. So in the deposition of Les Wexner, he was told that Maria Farmer, who was the victim of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell at the guest house on his mansion property, yeah, she said that the police told her, the sheriffs told her they worked for Wexner, and he laughed. You don't even need to be a billionaire for the police to be on side if you have wealth and power in a local neighborhood. And from what I understand, Highland Park is a pretty small area. I think there is something so suspect about that guy that is currently locked up for arson in jail with it doesn't look like he's getting off anytime soon. There's absolutely no evidence of him committing the arson from what I could see from the police report. I'd love someone to get the actual police report on it and we could look into it. Is that in his deposition? I don't think I'm not sure if I've read Sarowitz's deposition yet. Well, I might have to do that. I have been thinking about doing a deep dive into him, but we'll see. Got a few things to get through now because I've got a few more topics lined up. Okay, so count for violation of Americans with Disability Act. Plaintiff repeats, realleges, and incorporates paragraph 1 through 80 as set forth here and above by reference. On March 31st, 2025, plaintiff suffered from a traumatic, painful injury which substantially limits the major life activity of moving and working. Plaintiff requested after a short time being completely disabled and was granted a work accommodation which allowed her to work remotely part-time under the approved accommodation from home. In April 2025, plaintiff was constantly harassed by defendant's interim executive director Weigel to perform work above and beyond the granted approved documentation. Though defendant, through its interim executive director Weigel, repeatedly stated that she wanted plaintiff Smith to heal and get better, she constantly harassed plaintiff with email, texts, and phone calls, so much so that plaintiff Smith contacted the human resources contractor after she was unable to obtain an extension on a work assignment from Weigel. Plaintiff filed a complaint and asked for an investigation. So yeah, I'm sure we've all been there. Well, I've pretty much been self-employed my whole life, so I don't know too much about being harassed when I'm off sick, but because obviously when you're self-employed, it's very different. It's up to you if you want to answer people or not. But during COVID, I was working for someone and I had COVID. I got COVID in phase 1. Was it called phase 1? And I was employed and they were harassing me, and I worked with vulnerable people. I was working with vulnerable people and they were harassing me to go to work, and I was telling them I have symptoms. Meanwhile, we were being bombarded with public messaging saying, if you have any of these symptoms, do not come into contact with anyone, do not leave the house. And my workplace, working with vulnerable people, is telling me, please, can you go and see so-and-so? I could not believe it. I still to this day have the messages from them. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So she filed a complaint and asked for investigation. At no time did defendant Wayfarer Foundation attempt to have an interactive interview as is required by the ADA. She knows her rights, this woman, with plaintiff to determine what was actually required in terms of a reasonable accommodation under the ADA, but instead allowed interim director Weigel to interpret the accommodation on her and defendant Sarowitz's actions. Plaintiff obtained proper medical certification for her accommodation and met all of defendant's guidelines. Hey, if you break a rib, you have to rest in bed. There is no other thing you can do for that to heal. You literally cannot move. Every movement, even laughing, coughing, talking, is painful. Defendant's harassment subjected plaintiff to a hostile retaliatory work environment based upon interference with her alleged approved medical accommodation. While plaintiff was on the work restriction from home, working 4 hours per day, she was terminated on May 2nd, 2025, remotely without 1 day of notice. Other co-workers without a medical condition were not terminated. Defendant's actions subjecting plaintiff to a hostile work environment, denying her reasonable accommodations, not conducting an interactive interview because of her disability and approved accommodation, and treating plaintiff in a disparate, harassing and oppressive manner. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's wrongful acts and omissions, plaintiff Smith has sustained injuries and damages, including but not limited to loss of earnings and earning capacity, loss of career opportunities, Wherefore, plaintiff Smith respectfully requests that this court enter judgment in her favour of her ADA count and allow her all damages allowed, past and future, under the statute, including attorney fees and costs. It's very ironic as well that Steve Sarowitz made his $1 billion fortune out of a payroll software program, which is part of HR, when he seems to be the most un-HR person on earth. Trust me, I thought I was quite a reasonable person until, so to make a very long story short, okay, at one time I had a limited company, so my business was listed as a limited company, and then I changed from moving into the fashion industry. I became an artist. So when that happened, I became self-employed instead of limited company status. And as a self-employed person, so the company that I worked for, working with vulnerable people, they made me redundant. They tried to swindle me out of my redundancy pay, but I didn't find that out until a year later. But yeah, I was entitled to nothing. I was entitled to nothing. And the most frustrating thing about it was I was getting jobs. I was getting painting jobs, but I wasn't allowed to do them because we weren't allowed to work. And it went on for 9 months. It was honestly so stressful. And I know I wasn't the only person. And then they would say things like, you can apply for charity funds and food banks and all of this stuff. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want, like, I'm sure there are people that are needing it much more than me. Do you know what I mean? But that's not the point. It was a really, and the COVID inquiry is going on now, 6 years later. It's a joke. Let me stop ranting. They got away with not paying taxes, using their bullshit charity write-offs to take over entire towns and use prices over that. That's exactly what Les Wexner did. I hope you guys can watch my Les Wexner deposition because it needs some more views. But part 1, I think. Part 1, I show a video of the area they moved into called New Albany. Yeah, it was literally farmland and forests before Jeffrey Epstein and Les Wexner took it over and started building their homes. And then Les Wexner started building all his huge distribution warehouses. You know, those massive, we have them in the UK as well for Amazon and all the delivery storage units. I can't remember what they're called. But yeah, they just literally concreted the land over, put all of those huge warehouses, storage units, and then they started building data centers and getting all the people out of their homes. And then the last thing they did was built this huge Intel, the conductor manufacturing plant. And because AI is failing and it's never going to repay how much it's cost to fund it, that Intel plant, they are withdrawing the funding for it, so it's not going to happen. And they have literally like ruined that entire area of land. Oh, you've been in Lithuania? I hope you had a good time. I used to have a Lithuanian girl working for me. Okay, let's get back to. I think all of this stuff is such an education on how everything is structured against us, and it's like if you're a good person and you want to do like good, meaningful work and be like a moral person with ethics, you're cut out of the picture by these people. Like they think they're so clever, but they're not. They just don't have any morals or ethics. At all material times, plaintiff, an older Muslim female African American with a disability, was aggressively recruited by defendants within the parameters of the Illinois Civil Rights Act. The actions and omissions of defendants and their agents, representatives, and Human Resources Department were deliberate and intentional. Plaintiff's age, 52, gender female, and religion, Muslim, and/or race, African American, with disability and need for a medical accommodation was at least one factor that made a difference in defendant's decision to terminate plaintiff and replace her with a younger, non-African American male, non-Muslim, without a disability. Plaintiff's protected classifications were factors that made a difference in defendant's decision to terminate plaintiff and not place her in its continuing philanthropic work at Wayfarer Pathways in the Department of Private Giving. I'd love to know who they're giving to as well. Defendants, by their agents, representatives, and employees, were predisposed to discriminate based on gender and/or race and acted in accordance with that predisposition. Defendants, by their policies, procedures, and practices, were predisposed to discriminate based on age, gender, and/or race, disability, and religion, and acted in accordance with that predisposition in not allowing plaintiff to be selected for the interim executive director at the Wayfarer Foundation and replacing her at Wayfarer Pathways after June 1st, 2025, with a younger white male Baha'i without the need for an accommodation. Defendants terminated plaintiff's job because of her protected classification and discriminated against her when transferring its Wayfarer staff to its Wayfarer Pathways Corporation in an attempt to avoid any requirement of investigating plaintiff's discrimination and retaliation complaints filed in April 2025. That is another thing they do as well. I did a video ages ago about merchandise. It was one of my first videos that actually started to do well. And I found out that Teespring, the company that makes YouTube's merchandise, was owned by Sam Altman, who owns OpenAI. And what they did was they got all the YouTubers to start making merch and launched this whole campaign. Never paid anyone, and then they literally just closed down the business and then got another one of his companies to buy Teespring. Like then it's called like T2 Two Spring or something, like they'll just give it a slight name change, and they never pay any of the people they owe money to. Like, it's really disgusting what these people actually do. And these businesses, like, you know, you're talking about creative people, artists, they have very little resource to be able to get their money back. Anyway, I need to stop going off into tangents. Defendants transferred predominantly Baha'i employees but did not do so for plaintiff, showing the pretext of its actions. Plaintiff at all times worked at an excellent level, performing the work of her senior project manager position. Defendants terminated plaintiff because of her status within protected classifications of gender, race, age, religion, and disability. As a direct and proximate result of said acts and omissions under Illinois Human Rights Act by defendants, agents, and employees, Plaintiff Smith has suffered loss of wages, bonuses, benefits, loss of earning capacity, loss of dignity and enjoyment of life, mental and emotional distress, pain and suffering, embarrassment, and humiliation. So I was thinking as well, like, going back to Blake Lively, that film was the most successful film that Wayfarer has ever had or will ever have. And it made them millions, hundreds of millions. What was it? $350 million out of a $29 million budget or something. Oh, that must have been the expenses for 2024. No, I'm joking. I don't know if that was it. But yeah, he still chose to retaliate against her. Because she spoke out against him. Like, it's just so logical. There is no other explanation. Why else would he have done that? Count 6, retaliation. Here we go. Retaliation. We are nearly at the end. Plaintiff Celeste Smith, an African-American female Muslim, engaged in protective activity in 2024 and 2025 and has sought as a member of the executive board of Defendant Wayfarer Foundation to carry out defendants' rules and regulations and state and federal laws. In April 2025, plaintiff engaged in protected activity by filing complaints of race, disability, and religious discriminations with defendant's human resources contractor, and after the human resources contractor was abruptly terminated, with defendant Wayfarer Pathways human resources director. As a direct consequence of plaintiff's protected activity by asserting her rights for others and herself, defendants individually and or personally have subjected plaintiff Smith to retaliation and retaliatory harassment, creating a hostile retaliatory environment and materially adverse changes in the terms and conditions of her employment, including but not limited to talking to plaintiff about her religion and expressing disdain for her Muslim faith. I'm shaking my head, literally. Not trusting plaintiff, refusing to consider plaintiff for the interim executive director position, instead hiring a less qualified non-African American person of Baha'i, shutting plaintiff's attendance out of leadership meeting, talking to plaintiff in a loud, hostile and angry tone in front of her colleagues and direct reports, requiring plaintiff to evaluate grants application for Blacks and Muslims in a more restrictive manner, asking questions of plaintiff which were illegal about such grants. In case you missed it, he asked her whether one of the grants she was applying for, it was a Muslim women's community group, whether they were related to Malcolm X's daughter or something like that. terminating plaintiff overnight without any notice, even though she was on the executive team. Replacing plaintiff with a younger, non-African American male Baha'i faith employee after the function of her foundation was transferred to a department of the defendant Wayfarer Pathways. As a direct and proximate result of said retaliatory acts and omissions by defendant Wayfarer Foundation, its agents and employees, and defendant Wayfarer Pathways, and individually Steve Sarowitz, plaintiff has suffered and will continue to suffer lost wages and pension benefits. So basically, she's saying that all of the stuff that happened in terms of being questioned, being made to feel untrustworthy, being embarrassed in front of her colleagues, being fired in front of colleagues, and not being allowed to carry on at the other organization that everyone else did, even though she had done an amazingly exceptional job in her role, was a retaliatory act. It sounds pretty personal to me because she literally went up to him and said, I think that your attitude about Israel and Palestinians is very inappropriate and hostile. That's all she did. SMH. Count 7. Promissory estoppel and equitable estoppel resulting in detrimental reliance to all defendants under Illinois law. Defendants, through their agents and representatives in June 2023, hired plaintiff to the Wayfarer Foundation and knew that plaintiff was relying on its promises. Defendants affirmed to plaintiff that the promises were made to her were actual, as shown by her promotions, an increase in pay, bonuses, and other terms and conditions of employment. Plaintiff was not told by any of the defendants, including individual defendant Sarowitz, that discrimination and retaliation, including disparate treatment and hostile work environment, were present in Defendants Foundation and Pathways Corporation. That part, very important. Defendants closed down the Wayfarer Foundation after it operated for less than 5 years, to plaintiff's detriment, where plaintiff relied on the promise of 15 years prior to sunset to terminate her previous employment. So she was made a completely false promise. As a direct and proximate result of plaintiff's reliance on defendants' promises, plaintiff suffered damages which consists of past and future loss of income, bonuses, benefits, all of which are required to support her family and self. Wherefore, plaintiff requests this court enter judgment in her favour. And against defendants, granting relief for lost wages, benefits, compensatory damages for the amount she is found to be entitled, including non-economic damages, exemplary damages, consumer with the wrong costs, and attorney fees and/or equitable relief that appears appropriate at the time of trial. Respectfully submitted. Melvin Houston and Alice B. Jennings. So that is the end of the claim. Mate, as a sole trader corporation, when I found out that all these tech companies weren't even paying tax, it's just the whole last 10 years has just been one revelation after another about how it's not even the unfairness of it, because it's like if you want equality, then you need to address these issues. Like, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. Everyone can see it. Everyone can see it. The opportunities for young people. I talk to my daughter about it all the time. She's like, oh, Mum, you've done so much with your life. You've done this, you've done that. And I'm like, oh, my God, I know. But it was so different. Like, now everything is so restricted. It's so much harder for everyone. And yet these billionaire tech companies have been rinsing the whole planet dry, the whole world dry. And people just want to live their life. Oh, thank you. You don't have to. I have noticed there's been a serious drop in my views lately. I really don't get it. Like, even when I started my channel, I would get like maybe a few hundred views, but recently it's been going down to less than 100 views. It's really weird. There's something definitely going on with the algorithm in general. The whole global I could go on about all of this stuff, like how they created the carbon tax and all this bollocks just to make more money out of creating more damage. Anyway, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. It's been 3 hours nearly, but we've gone through the whole lawsuit filing, and I don't know how these people do it in like less than an hour, but I give a lot of extra context with my videos, so that's all in there. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be back soon. I'm going to do a quick one about Tony Busby and what I found out about him, because remember, he's representing Alexa Nicholas against the Wayfarer parties, I think. And and then I'm going to do one about Lady Victoria Harvey, who's in the Epstein files, because I found out a lot about her background. All right, guys, thank you for joining me and commenting as always. Have a wonderful rest of the day or evening. Speak to you soon. Bye.